Welcome to the Sainthood Podcast, where we explore the intersection of Christian spiritual formation and the vibrant world of creativity, music, and life. I'm your host and sinner turned saint, Saint Chry. In this podcast, we dive into what it means to follow Jesus and become more like him in today's world. Join us for candid conversations and insightful interviews with musicians, artists, pastors, and more. Alongside these conversations, I'll share teachings, sermons, and personal stories that aim to deepen your understanding and practice of faith. On this episode, singer-songwriter SAHED shares her story about being a Christian and a creative in her musical space. So whether you're looking to deepen your life with God, connect with a community, or find inspiration, this podcast is for you. Welcome home. Join us on a journey into sainthood. Miss SAHED, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I am great. It's great to have you on the podcast. So for our listeners who don't know who you are, can you please give your name, your artist name, your age, and where you're living?
Yeah. So my artist name is SAHED, and it is an Aramaic word meaning witness. I am 25 years old, and I'm living in Northern California. So it's really nice. It's different than LA. Tell you that, but it's
Definitely.
beautiful out here. Lots of lakes and mountains and heat waves, which is crazy.
Heat waves. Wait,
Yeah.
are you in the area that gets the wildfires?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, dang.
Right now it is 110 degrees outside, and last week is
Wow.
119. Yeah. Yeah.
See, I was
Right.
in Texas
Yeah.
a little while ago and it got to like 104. That was the first time I ever had like triple digit heat. And I
Hmm.
like at 7 p.m. I was done with the day. Like,
No.
but you're saying
No.
119?
It's traumatic. Yeah. 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 Disgusting.
That's crazy.
Alarming.
We
Yeah,
need to
it's
pray for
crazy.
Northern California.
But the thing is, regardless of the heat, I will always drink something hot.
Mm,
So
you're a resilient person.
I like hot drinks. It's weird when certain drinks aren't
Is
hot.
it coffee or
Like
is it tea?
it's tea. This is matcha. I drink matcha most days.
Nice.
I love it. I make it
Yeah.
myself though because it's a pricey latte. I tell you that, and it was
Mm.
adding up, and I don't have money like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So, for those of the audience who don't know your story, share your life before Jesus, your
Mhm.
life when you met Jesus, and then your life now and creativity.
Yeah. Great. So I remember the first time I met Jesus, and I was actually really young. I was around 5 years old, 5 or
Wow.
6, and I remember being in the kitchen. We had just come back from church, and the gospel had been presented, and I was like, I need Jesus. I just had this moment where I was just very aware of my need for him. Um, so my story with God, it's more so how he showed up for me through what would happen after I met him. And so what happened after I met him was my family fell apart. My dad
Mm,
left. There was a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect, a lot of uh, pain, really, in my life. And
mm,
so it's being a part of a church going family. And this is the chaos at home. You know, you have betrayal, deception. Um, and I just felt like I wasn't worth nothing, right? Like when you have a figure that's meant to be supportive and safe, literally being the opposite of that, it really shapes your opinion of yourself and of the world. And so my opinion of myself is that I was worthless, that all life would be was just pain and really being um, at the will of anyone else is what that really felt
mm,
like. I felt very powerless, very weak. Um, Developed anxiety, PTSD, depression, all of these things. And that really, really affected my day to day. So, like, a lot of days I would have panic attacks. I'd be
wow.
shaking all the time, sleep issues, like a lot of that trauma was really manifesting physically, and that was really
Hmm.
difficult. And so I remember always going to church though, and finding God really in the midst of that. To me, God was really a positive contrast to what I was experiencing. So when a parent was not there for me, God was there for me. When someone would hurt me,
Mm.
God would heal me. So God was a very positive place for me to run to, in my, you know, growing up days when everything was terrible and we were poor. So like I like lights turned out and roaches running around, house falling apart. Like it was rough. And so just kind of having, you know, that be my reality, I was forced to really decide. And I think everyone comes to the point where this is, you know, the decision they get to make is like, do you choose God or yourself, really? You know, you can
Yeah.
choose yourself to protect yourself and, you know, be the determining factor to what life is, what the world is, or you can turn to God and receive what he says about you and what he says about the people that hurt you and what he says about the world around you. So yeah, I really found God. I wrote a song, just a short little song once, and it was just kind of, it says the line, I found love in the wilderness. And I really feel like that sums up, you know, my walk with God, is I really found him in a desolate place. um, you know, I didn't come to God because everything was good. It was because everything was drastically not good. And so
Yeah.
just meeting him in that space was beautiful. And, you know, I'm human. So there was a time I was really lukewarm. And then I came into a bout of really, really like a lot of mental health things that were really scary. And that really pushed me to God, like for real, where I was like, I really actually have to be real about my walk with him.
Mm.
Because my life apart from him is chaotic, it's painful, it's unstable, and it's who I am without him is not who I want to be. So I had that
Mm.
moment as I was going into high school, and then started leading worship, started singing, which was crazy because I couldn't sing for a very long time. And so it had been
Wow.
prophesied over me. However, at a church, they would, every time people would pray over me and hear from the Lord, they said, I see you singing in front of thousands of people. Um, and it was
Wow.
crazy because I really couldn't sing. Like I was not that musician that's been, you know, doing music outside, out of the womb. It was this thing that kind of came up. And even
Mm.
songwriting, I couldn't write songs. And then went to a prayer meeting and they prayed for me and they said, hey, like we really, like we impart the gift of spontaneous song to you. And ever since then I could like literally write a song on a dime. It's crazy. Like,
Wow.
so, you know, my testimony, it's really like I should have been a product of my circumstance, but I was a product of God. I really feel
Mm.
like I can't take credit for who I am or what I create, because I remember the moment that God placed it in my hands. Uh,
Wow.
so yeah, that's like my, you know, kind of the summary of my testimony with the Lord, and it ties into everything. Yeah,
Yeah. That's so cool. So you got into this place where you felt like you didn't have access to that creativity of singing, but you had
yeah,
people of faith who were talking and encouraging you, prophesying over you, saying that you would have this gift one day. Like,
yeah.
so now you're in a new space in your creative
Mhm.
field, and you're actually coming out with an album soon, which is super
Yeah,
cool
so
to just see that
crazy.
journey. So
Yeah,
how, like, what was the in between from that moment when you could actually sing to now where you're, working on completing an
yeah.
album?
So it's so funny because I just like to sing. I loved performing. I loved all that stuff. So I was in performing arts and stuff in high school and loved being on a stage. Loved performing. I love the stories that I get to tell, you know, through the creative world. And so that was a big part of what I did. And then go to college and I have the options. And this is where we met, good old
Mm-hmm.
college. And so I go to university and I, you know, I get to choose my degree. So it was either I was going to go business. And then
Really?
my dad was like, I would actually really hate to see you not do the music thing. And I
Wow.
was like, kind of shocked because he was kind of on the fence about it for a while. And then he was like, actually, I would hate to see you. And I was like, okay. So I ended up studying music and I took artist development specifically. So I was training specifically to be a performing artist.
Wow.
And um, that was so interesting because I felt like I could not relate to the other music majors and stuff. Like it just wasn't my personality. That was the weird thing. And I feel like
Mm.
if you saw me in college, I feel like you would know that I sang because it's what I did. Like everyone literally saw me singing.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it was something that really leaked into, my day to day in the way of like, it's my whole personality. I'm a singer, I'm an artist, I'm going to do this. Like, I just
Mm.
liked it for the craft and it's a part of me, but it wasn't like all of me. And so I felt kind of weird, I think, in the music world because I felt like all the other performers were so much more of an artist than I was. It's just like,
Mm.
ask you about it, I'll talk about it. But so yeah, so that was kind of my first kind of like, I don't know where I fit in this whole music thing. And then I actually had never really dreamed about releasing original music. Like,
Wow.
I
Huh.
just didn't really think about it, which is really funny. Even one of my friends from college, she was like, hey, she was like, I always wondered if you would actually like release music. And I was like, no, like I never really talked about it. She was like, yeah. Um, which is funny because it's like flipped. So all the people that were talking about releasing music haven't really released that much music. And then I never talked about it. And so it's just, I think it's just like so funny how life really just, you never know where it will take you. So
Absolutely.
basically, I remember the first time though that I thought, hey, I might actually release original music. And it's a song that's actually on this record. It's Rescue Me. You were there actually when I was recording that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a
So it's
fire song.
Rescue Me. Thanks. So Rescue Me, I wrote it on an acoustic guitar in my bedroom, my childhood bedroom. It was on summer break
Wow.
and I was really having a rough time. And I remember I ended up using it for a project for music and worked with a producer, a production major.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he really made it like super cool. And I remember just hearing it, and I went to my room and I made like fake little album covers, and I was like, one day. And
Yeah.
so that was my first kind of thought process, like, oh, maybe I'll do this. And so years passed. Finished up college, and I changed my degree to music, religion, and psychology. I was like an interdisciplinary studies major by the time I left
Wow.
school because I was thinking, oh, I'm going to be a worship leader. And I was like, no, thank you. That's another conversation for another day. But um,
Absolutely.
ended up like just not being the path that I felt led to take yet, at least. And I moved to California. God tells me to move. So I just move with like 2 months heads up pretty much. So I just bounced.
Wow.
And that was crazy, which I literally hung out with you before I left. I just remember like
That's true.
you and your sister, and we took
Yes.
pictures.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
And you're
that's
like,
so
okay,
funny.
bye.
Yeah. Like I literally was like, peace out. And so, I left then and then in California. And I, through college, I did photography, right? So I picked
Yeah.
up photography and had my photography brand. So that was my thing, my side hustle. And so then I was like, oh, maybe I can just have it all under one vein. I can have photography, videography, music, writing, blogging, poetry, dance, like all the things that I like to
Mm.
do in one place.
Yeah.
So I made another Instagram account and then I just start praying really about like, okay, what does this look like? And it was actually before, sorry to backtrack, but it was actually before I went to California. I was visiting my dad in Miami and I was just praying about what this is, the whole artist thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching a Bible Project video about um, being witnesses, how we are witnesses, as people of God.
Mm.
And they did like the Hebrew word and the Greek word. And I remember how that word witness really, really resonated with my heart. I was like, I feel like that's who I am. And God brought me to a scripture in Acts that basically when the apostles were told, hey, stop talking about him,
Yeah.
they were like, we can't help but to speak of what we've seen and what we've heard. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, there's such simplicity in being a witness, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just is, there's something about testimony that's untouchable. And I felt like God was like, I want you to share your testimony. about life, and I felt like witness was the perfect phrase because it was nuanced in a way.
Yeah.
Because some songs I have are about heartbreak, or processing abuse, processing, healing. And so a lot of my
Mm-hmm.
songs have different functions that don't really fit the box of maybe CCM or something like that. So I
Right.
love the word witness because I can just say that I'm really just speaking of what I've seen and I've heard. It's that simple. My experience of God, of life. And so my artist name was Witness for a while. And then it went into a year of like hiddenness, honestly, and me just sitting with this word witness, because I knew that before I put myself out as an artist, I wanted to know who I was, and I wanted to be settled in that.
Mm.
I didn't feel like doing the whole, you know, back and forth and finding myself and having everyone tell me who I am because I don't know thing, that a lot of artists go
Yeah.
through. A lot of artists
Wow.
make it in the industry because they are who they're told to be, you know.
Mm.
And you see that come out with Kesha and Taylor Swift. Like Taylor Swift just released an album that says Taylor's version. I was like, girl, I thought it was your version.
Right.
All right.
Right.
you know, but that just shows, kind of the control that is in the industry. So I was very aware.
Mm.
I've definitely seen behind a lot of curtains in the industry. And so I was like, I know who I want to be. And so in that year, I found that, my purpose, with the craft is really to connect with God and myself and to glorify God and to honestly be edifying for myself first. Then I
Mm.
share it with people if the Lord permits, and then that's when other people get to be invited in that space. But that
Wow.
space at first is just very me and him,
Yeah.
and that's something I protect. It's something I think keeps it fulfilling for me right now, at least. Because if
Mm-hmm.
I try to write a song and it's with the intention of others, initially, it gets in the way. To me, it
Mm.
taints the authenticity, and I think people are moved more so by something authentic than something, you know, calculated.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was my journey kind of in the shadows. And then when I was researching artist names, there was already an artist name Witness. There was a couple, and I was like, yikes. So I was like, okay, maybe we can say witness like in another language. And so I went around. I love biblical languages, and so the Bible is written in Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic.
Mm-hmm.
The Aramaic was the language Jesus spoke, and so I was like, oh wait, let me look up the word witness in Aramaic, and
Yeah.
it's found literally once, this word, in Job, when Job says, God is my witness. Um,
Whoa.
right. And it's SAHED. And so I was like, oh, and when I saw it, it kind of like resonated in my heart, but I was
You're like, this
scared
looks
because,
like I feel this. This looks good.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
yes. I was like, I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels. It just something resonated. But then I was like so scared about it because I was like, who's going to be able to pronounce that, right? I was like, dog, like everyone's gonna be like, say head,
Said,
Sahid,
said.
say. It's like there's so many ways.
Yeah.
But then I felt like I really felt the Lord on it, and also I was like, I think the name really encapsulates what I'm about as an artist, and I love challenging people. I love,
Mm.
and so I love that even with the name, it's like you have to think, and that's really the goal of my music is think,
Yeah.
understand. I think everything's so expedited and easy that we are losing the quality of so many things. And so, with
Wow.
even the name pronunciation being difficult, I think it's really kind of fitting.
Yeah.
But I love the word Sahed. That I made an Instagram page, I think like last June, and maybe even the June before. It was a while ago, but I made it before I even went to the studio. And I remember thinking, I want to remember, this version of myself, the version of myself that only has my friends following this account,
Mm-hmm.
the humble beginnings, the hiddenness, the hustle before the hype. And
Yeah.
so I started that page, and also it was a way to keep me accountable to what I said I was going to do, because at this point, I was in Colorado visiting my family, and it was New Year's of 2021, I think.
Wow.
And we're 20. Yeah, one of those years, 21 or 22. And I was like, okay, it's time to make an album, so I'm feeling like, and God gives me the phrase timeline, and just something, thematically about the movement of time and how we
Hmm.
move through the timeline. Because there's a timeline, we just don't see it, but we're moving through our own timelines, and then seeing also, how God is a part of that timeline. And so
Yeah.
that was the title of my album, is Timeline. And um, that helped me kind of create a structure for the creation of the album and all this stuff. So yeah, so that is how I kind of creatively got here, was this journey of
Yeah.
really hiddenness and dialogue with the Lord, and just seeing, who does he want me to be and who do I want to be,
Yeah.
because those are the only two opinions that I can take with me when I die. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's
when you think
that's
about
really
it,
deep. That's really deep what you
that
just said. You're not
right,
wrong.
like, those are the only two opinions I can take with me when I go. And so I'm like
Mm,
sitting here, I'm gonna stand before God,
right.
and I'm not. No, ain't nobody else. I mean, maybe they're there, but they ain't. They have.
They're not the final say though.
They're not though. And so I think
Yeah.
that year of me just kind of not putting anything out and being really hidden is really what I think settled me into my craft, as a
Hmm.
creative and who I was. But it was a long journey of trying a whole bunch of different things and finding who I am. Like, even like me liking to write, like even things that are not songs, like poems, poetry, like poetry, same thing,
Mm-hmm.
poetry and books and all these things that I like to write. It was hard because I felt like I had to choose, one thing to do creatively. I should
Yeah.
just sing, or only singer songwriter, two things. That's it. But I'm like, no, I want to do more. And then the Lord was like, you can actually literally do whatever you want. I was like, wait,
Wow.
whoa. Especially now,
Wow.
because I'm like, nobody know. Well, not nobody knows me, but I have a small following right now, and that's really cool because I literally can do whatever I want. And
You're not
now
boxed in.
I'm not boxed in, and now the box is what I made it to be. People know that this is who I am because that's what was given to them at
Right.
first. And so
Hmm.
I think it's a really special time when you're just building up following to just establish your identity. So yeah,
That's
that
so
was a lot
beautiful.
of random things, but
No,
yay.
but it's honestly, I feel like there's just nuggets of truth. So, one thing I wanted to ask you is, because you said that you spent a whole year in hiddenness.
Yeah.
What were the difficulties with that? And then on the other side of it, how do you feel like that benefited you, like long term in your creative journey?
Yeah. Hiddenness is, I think there's level. And I think too, it's like I had the year of intentional hiddenness as an artist, right? Where I'm like, I'm focusing on this, but I had years of hiddenness before. So I think the
Mm,
hiddenness that actually wasn't my choice was harder.
yeah.
Like, being on a big worship team, right? But I wasn't really like the star of the show. That
Right.
was a hidden season, and
Mm,
I think I've been in a lot of environments where I was only sort of kind of noticed, which was fine. But then there's also a level of insecurity that can really be brought up in the midst of that. So I think the hard part is you actually have to be validated by God as opposed to other people. Because you don't have people there always saying you're amazing, you sound amazing, the song's amazing. You have God saying be faithful. And that's
mm,
trust. So I think that's, to me, that's the difficult
wow.
part of hidden seasons, is that you actually have to rely on God's opinion, because that's pretty much the only one that you have when you're hidden. Um, so that was the difficult part, but I would say that's also like the beautiful part, was having a fear of the Lord and a value for His voice was really cool, to kind of cultivate that and protect that and receive from it, and just realize, like, oh, it's simple. Like, I think the simplicity of the hidden place is like why I actually like it is because it's just me and God. The way that humanity is inclined to view things is limited, right? Like, people will always see the surface until,
Mm.
you know, God reveals more. And so to be alone with God in a season, and he is this all-knowing, kind being that understands is beautiful and safe. So it's cool, but then obviously I'm human and I want people to tell me I'm great and give me reassurance. And they do come, you know, it does come, but I think that season helped me have my priorities really straight. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Just having, like, I hear what you're saying is that since God is infinite and unlimited and he can meet all our needs and we can be kind of like needy with him,
Mm-hmm.
it prepares us to when we have other voices in our lives that his sticks out the most.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
And
very
it puts
beautiful.
it like in its place. I remember I was telling somebody, we were talking about trust, right? And I was like, if I trust someone in the same way I trust God, I actually will put unrealistic expectations on that person. And that actually isn't honoring to that relationship. And so
Mm,
realizing like you can actually honor other people's voices when their voices are actually in the right place. Uh, and you can receive criticism and praise, you know, in peace because it's your priorities are where they should be. Um,
yeah,
you know, it's all valuable, but it's just like having it be in a place is really important.
yeah, that's so good. So now you're on this journey of building your album and presenting it to people and like
Yeah.
allowing God to breathe on it. Has there been like a practice that has helped you to sustain you through this time, like prayer, fasting, reading the word, community? Has there been something that's really been illuminated to you in this season of your life?
Yeah. I think it's more it's a constant awareness of my need for him.
Mm,
That's really like I think creating an album really, really and anything that you create that its theme is something personal. I think you'll experience this. It's just very intense.
yeah.
You know, a lot of the songs were about hard parts of my life. And so having to kind of relive those. And then also, I can't write anything good if I'm not vulnerable, but I also don't like being
Mm,
vulnerable, drains me. So having to be vulnerable for long periods of time, it's not easy. And so just kind of having this experience of like, ooh, I'm so drained and I'm seeing so many ugly sides of myself. Sorry.
mm.
So stressful. And so that I feel like, sorry, this is like a long answer to this question,
No,
but
this is a good answer.
when, okay, good. So when I was working on the album that year of my life was I feel like the worst year probably. And it's funny because I've had more worse years, but something about
Mm,
that year was just the worst. Like I had, you know, death in the family. You know, my sibling, you know, is going through a very intense, hard time. My dad is going through this, and then personal relationships in my life falling apart. You know, like
mm.
breakup, every single thing that could have gone wrong, I felt like went wrong, and anything
I
that was
feel you.
going right just decided to join what was going wrong.
I feel you.
So you're right. So, and especially too, I remember when I went to record it, and you know, even looking back on all the videos y'all got, I looked tired because I was, you know, where I was like, no, I'm tired, and so I think I was drained in every way, emotionally, um, mentally, physically, spiritually. You know, I had nothing, and it put me in this place where I like felt like I broke.
Mm,
And then that was the sweet spot because I had nothing, so I had everything.
mm.
And that's honestly like when I listen to these songs and how well they sound and how excellent that was done, it's nothing but the Spirit of God because I know
Yeah.
I had nothing. And so that's what I think the only thing that sustained me was was believing I needed him and
Wow.
believing he would come and meet my needs because I didn't have capacity for all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I sometimes I wonder, you know, people that walk with Jesus when they're sick in bed, what does that look like then? Can they get their coffee, go to the
Mm.
coffee shop and journal, read their Bible? You know, it's like, no, like there are
Yeah.
times in life where all you can do is say, I need you. And I
Yeah.
believe that you will come and save me. So
Mm.
that's what that was. That was
Wow.
the only thing that sustained me was faith because I
Yeah.
had nothing else. Everything that I could lean on decided to not to fall out.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's something good to really bring to the surface is like how difficult the creative journey can be. Like the verse that comes to mind is Psalm 23, where it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with
Hmm.
me. And I love
Yes.
the essence of the shadow of death. Like it's still like a hard and
Hmm.
tumultuous and like really crazy time, but it's a
Hmm.
shadow,
Yes.
you know?
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a shadow.
That's a word.
So
It
that's
is.
encouraging because I feel like I'm in that season as well of just like
Mhm.
having a lot of different things not fall into place the way I wanted them to. So now it's
Right.
like you're saying, you're at rock bottom, and
Yeah.
the rock's got to be Jesus at this point. That's at the
It's
bottom.
it. That's it. You have nothing
Yeah,
but him. Nothing but
yeah,
him. And so, yeah, it was that moment, but I just said, I was like, okay, God, that's it. That's all I could say. God.
that's the prayer. Is just
And he
hello.
showed up. And it actually helped because when I was working the album, there were some songs I just had the title.
Mm,
So I was just waiting for the Lord to give a song. And one of the songs that I wrote, Hindsight, which is really beautiful, which was my intention, but it's a short song, and the phrase is just nothing is without meaning. All things can bring healing. Finally, I'm seeing hindsight's 2020. And it's this
wow,
moment where I'm surrounded in this world of chaos. And actually, I wrote that song on a pretty good mood day. And then
nice.
everything hit the fan after I wrote it.
God was
And
like, I'm preparing you to like live this.
right. And it's
Mm,
funny because, I have to go, I'm recording a demo. I was recording the demo for the song, and I was like, do I believe that? Like, I remember just
wow,
having,
wow.
just like experiencing so much pain in that season emotionally
Mm,
because of things that had happened and, things that felt really meaningless. Like, very much like, oh my gosh, what's the point of this happening if this was only going to be the outcome kind of scenarios?
hmm.
And then I'm singing a song, nothing is without meaning. I'm like, well, some things are without meaning, like wanting
Right.
to, like, dang. And then, challenging myself because I don't like singing stuff I don't believe. And so
Mm,
challenging myself to actually believe that. I'm like,
yeah.
actually, in this moment, I still believe that there's nothing that's meaningless with God and that every single thing can bring healing. And when I
Mm,
see that, it's this whoa, like this really refreshing moment that can
yeah.
refresh me through hardship. And so it's funny with the songs because God, like, low key gave them to me for me, like in a
Yeah.
way where I'm like, this is ministering to my heart because I don't,
Yeah.
you know, don't always
In
believe
the
it.
current season that you're in. I think that's very beautiful.
Hmm.
What you said about you challenge yourself to not sing things that you don't believe or you haven't lived. And I
Yes.
think in my position as a creative, but also someone who works in and with ministry, is
Hmm.
that was something that I heard from a pastor who's a little farther, who's way farther along the journey than me, and he was like, "Don't don't even quote things you haven't read, bro." And I was like,
Don't
wow.
even talk about it,
Because I
right?
think I think going back to the authenticity piece is like
Hmm.
if you've really experienced it, then other people will really experience it as well.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know? So
And
I
that's
think
the
it's a
thing.
beautiful thing to say.
Life is too short too for it. I've been really on this lately where I'm like, we spend so much of our life doing things we don't want to do, saying things we don't mean, being places we aren't meant to be. That's
Mm,
actually crazy. That's
that's
actually
true.
crazy. When you think about how literally the space between you and where you want to be is two things: God's will and your willingness. That's it. That's it. That's
Wow.
crazy. That is really that simple. I'm not saying just go somewhere because you want to, but I was like, a
Mm,
lot of people I know, God already talked to you. I know
Yeah.
he told you where you should be, and you're sitting here twiddling your thumbs, discontent. Like I work
Yeah.
so much right now because I'm a hustler, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
working and I spend a lot of my time with a great company, but it's not what I'm called to do.
Mm.
And I'm like having this moment where I actually have a choice, because every creative has this moment where they have to dive. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Deep
think
dive.
Taraji Henson, great story for her. She moved to California with a child and $500
Wow.
because she was like, I'm meant to do this, and I'm like,
Wow.
you know, these are the things, some of the most successful people look like complete idiots to their friends, and I think
Yeah.
you hear these stories about people and I'm like, look at them now, and there's no risk, no reward. So I think
Mm.
that's my biggest takeaway, I think, from this album too, is like, wow, Lord, it's actually crazy what happens when I believe you. Because when I went to Virginia to record the record, I didn't even have all the money.
Yeah. That was
I
that
actually
was
think,
okay. That was such a like that was a faith boost for me because I'm like, dang, she's out here like I didn't even think of doing what you did, which was just like you moved 100% in faith and you're like, listen, I need your help actually, Lord. And you
yeah,
invite
that
other
was
people into
actually
the
crazy.
process too. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's I think because of that, and this is just me interpreting, but I think because of that season of hiddenness, like it killed your ego and
Yes.
resurrected like humility,
Yes. A
you
hundred
know? And
percent. 100%.
I feel like as a creative, like we have this desire for perfection. We have this desire for like great work to be done.
Yeah.
And we think it's just encapsulated within us doing the work ourselves alone.
Yes.
And the more and more I've been on this journey and like stepping out in faith with different creative things, I'm realizing it's like God's really going to kill your ego.
Yes.
He's really going to kill your ego so that you know who is actually providing you the gift and the gifting.
That was the biggest thing. Yeah, that's crazy. I remember because I was like, oh, I can work really hard to make this money for this record, or I can
Mm,
crowdfund. And I remember the Lord saying, I want you to crowdfund. I was like, that's awkward. Like, because it's like a personal thing. It's like music. It feels weird. Um,
yeah,
and the Lord's like, why not? And I was like, well, because people are going to think this, and I won't get to say I did it by myself. So that's just pride. That's
yeah.
crazy. It was simply just pride. And then God was also like, my heart is connection and community.
Mm,
That's what the world was created in.
yeah,
The Trinity was literally. And so, I don't know, I think it was humbling and then faith building. And I
hmm,
think this was the first faith jump, I will say though, that involved other people's paychecks. And that did scare me because
yeah.
it
Because
was, it
you
was
almost feel like you're accountable to them, you know?
right, right. That was scary. Like for
Yeah,
me, by myself, I'm good. I'm like, oh, I'm by myself. It's fine. But when it's other people's paychecks, woo, but God did provide for them. It was crazy. Like literally, the week I was there, had enough to pay everyone
yeah.
everything. And
Mm,
so, and he's continued to provide. But this is again, no risk, no reward. A lot of people by that point I was at would have just been like, oh, it's not meant to be.
right.
And I was like, I
They would,
feel like
yeah.
God said what he said.
Mm,
And it's like just really actually having a trust and a reverence for the word of the Lord. I was like, he spoke to me and he's not petty like that. Like, I was like, I don't
right,
feel like he's going to not do it. I just don't think that's his character. And it wasn't.
right.
So,
Praise God for that, man.
mhm.
Praise God for that. Okay, I have maybe two more questions.
Cool.
The first question is if you had some advice for a creative who's just starting out, what would be like one thing you would want to tell them?
Know who you are, know God, and know your craft. That's it. I think spending time to become well acquainted with these things are going to be really, really valuable, because as you grow, there are going to be people that come and try to, like, record labels that maybe want to sign you or other places. But when you know those three things, you will not be deceived, and you're not also going to be a slave to people's opinions. So I think when you really, those are the two things that I see with like a lot of creatives. You know, they're deceived and misled, and then they're a slave to the opinion of the man.
Wow.
But when you know those things, man, like, you know what you do, you're confident in it, and you know who you are, and you know God, it's like you're unstoppable. So that's my advice.
Thank you for sharing that. And then our last question is there a book, a song or album or a movie that like really inspired you creatively?
Oh, yes. So many things. Okay, a book is called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Super cool book.
The Creative Act.
Yeah, it's by this guy who, he's a producer, but he's not super musical, which is funny. But he has a way of just unlocking people so they can create, so that everyone pays him the big bucks. But he basically is honestly the guy who gave me the language for the whole, like, oh, it's for the glory of God and for the enjoyment of myself. He doesn't share songs he doesn't like. Now, I don't know if he's Christian, you know, but what he's saying is still good to me. But it's very like just saying it's like an act of worship, what you create.
Right.
And also it's just, that's it. Just honor God and honor yourself. That's pretty much it. And then when you share songs with people, share songs that you like. And that's the thing. Like all the songs I share, I like them.
Right.
That's it. So much more peace. Like every time I release a song, it just feels like I got it off my chest. You know, people's opinions kind of don't matter that much to me with it, because I like it. I think it's a good song. I like the way it is.
Right.
So that's all my tell for if a song is something I want to release. Do I like it? Does God like it? Do I like it? So Rick Rubin is really good. I think he also teaches kind of how to find inspiration and how to respond to it. So it's a great book, great read. So that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that so much. Oh my goodness. You know what? I think what I'll do is like, maybe after this, I can ask you for recommendations, and maybe we can make like a page or something with recommendations from people from the podcast.
Totally. I would love that. I think that'd be great.
That would be so cool. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure to have you. And guys, if you want to connect with SAHED or SAHED, if you want to connect with SAHED, you can look at her name on the podcast, and it's at SAHED, I think, on Instagram. YouTube is going to come up soon. And yeah, connect with her. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Before we end our time together, I wanted to read this prayer over you, because this is what I hope these teachings and conversations produce in you. So I want you to take a moment, close your eyes, if you can, and take a deep breath and listen to this prayer. Paul, writing to the Ephesians in chapter 3, verses 16 to 19 says, I pray that he may grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with power in your inner being through his Spirit, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. I pray that you, being rooted and firmly established in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the length and width and height and depth of God's love, and to know Christ's love that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with the fullness of God. Thanks for joining us on the Sainthood Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at St. Chry for more content, and leave a review on this pod if this episode blessed you. Until next time, may you receive God's love in greater measure, so you can pour it out to those around you in greater measure every day.